Hi again then guys, and so we've got another slightly different kind of video for you today, and this was kind of a requested video as well. And this is going to be a series coming out on the channel. This of course is the first episode. Not sure exactly how regularly these videos will come out, perhaps weekly, perhaps not, I'm not sure yet. But basically in this video and the videos to come, I'll basically be presenting a vehicle which, as the name of the video suggests, I would love to see feature in the next Gran Turismo, or the next major Gran Turismo game. Now, I'm not pitching this for Gran Turismo 6, because we don't seem to be getting a huge amount of new cars on the game at this point. Maybe we will, but at the moment that doesn't look too promising. As far as Gran Turismo Sport, well, at this time we don't know enough about the game to speculate as to what cars or how many cars will be included. We know of a few new ones, but that's about it. As far as GT7 though, we can be sure that whenever that game does come out, it will be the next major Gran Turismo, regardless of whether GT Sport is or not. So, for this initial episode, the first car that I would love to see on Gran Turismo, as you'll have seen from, of course, again, the title of the video, is a car which is quite possibly my favourite car of the entire Gran Turismo franchise. I started Gran Turismo back on Gran Turismo 2 when I was around probably 6 or 7 years old, and to set the scene of the car that I would like to see return, just watch this. Now, to see that car at that age, it's like nothing else on the game. There is no other car like that on Gran Turismo. Nothing else even comes close. Gran Turismo has always had vehicles which are crazy. Of course they have. That's always been one of the reasons why people love Gran Turismo, because of those crazy cars. But, especially in more recent years, from say Gran Turismo 5 onward, they've started to water down the cars on the game quite a lot. And I don't mean what the cars are capable of, but I mean the types of cars that have featured on Gran Turismo have become very much watered down. They're not as crazy as they used to be. They're very conservative. They feature cars that they think people will want to see. Cars like Ferraris of various types, the Veyron, the Ferrari 458 as an example of the Ferraris, the Corvette C7, the Honda NSX concept. I've said before on the channel that I think the new shape Honda NSX is probably going to be the hero car of Gran Turismo 7, much in a similar way as the Corvette C7 has kind of been for GT6, that one big glitzy glamorous new model which is given more due than it really deserves in the grand scheme of things on the game. A car which is a little bit too OP, but people forgive it because they love it so much because it's this big shiny new toy. I think the NSX is going to be that car on Gran Turismo 7. I think it's going to be one of the quickest road cars in the game. From the concept that we already have on GT6, we already know it's going to be a fantastic model. But I want to see a return to form for Gran Turismo. I want to see them bring back some of the crazy cars that they used to have and add some crazy cars that they've never had. But for this episode, I want to see the return of the Renault Espace F1. This car is, by far, with no competition anywhere near it, the car that I want to see the most return to Gran Turismo. As far as I know, it was only ever featured on one Gran Turismo game, and that was GT2. It was my favourite car in the game. It took ages to finally save up for the car, and it was a monster. For those who have never driven the car or never played Gran Turismo 2, the closest thing to it is probably the Suzuki Escudo. That's a similar kind of car. Racing spec, crazy power, insane acceleration. But even then, the Escudo is still quite far off from what the Espace F1 sounds like, looks like, performs like. For those who are unfamiliar with the Espace F1, it's basically a car which nobody asked for, but everybody loved. It's the concept of taking a minivan, or people carrier, and basically fitting that body onto what is essentially a Formula 1 car. It's powered by a mid-mounted 3.5 litre V10 Renault Williams engine, as used in their F1 car of the time. It produces over 800 horsepower. The car itself weighs far less than you'd expect for a people carrier. It still, funnily enough, actually has 4 seats, which wasn't even necessary. But I love the fact that they did that. It has a sequential gearbox, hits 60 miles per hour in about 2.6 seconds, and has a top speed of over 190 miles per hour. Now that doesn't sound like that much by today's supercar standards, but back in roughly 1994, 1995, when the Espace F1 was built, that was unheard of. That was quicker than the fastest car in the world at the time, the McLaren F1. 2.6 seconds absolutely blew the McLaren F1 out of the water. Now the Espace F1, of course, is not a street-legal vehicle. It's kind of a nothing vehicle. It's not really a concept. It's not really a race car. It's more just Renault having fun. And that's something which companies don't often do. But when they do, it tends to be pretty awesome. And the Espace F1 is the perfect example of that. Another example of that would be the Ford Transit Supervans. They're a very similar concept. Not quite as insane as the Espace, but a similar theme. Now, the reason why I want to see the car return is twofold. One, it's hugely nostalgic for me and brings back those crazy cars that Gran Turismo used to be known for, and which have kind of been missing from most recent games. But the other thing is because it isn't just an empty whim. The Espace F1 was one of the quickest cars in the game, and it still would be. Because that's the great thing about the Espace F1, it's kind of like the TVR Speed 12. Its age doesn't really mean anything. It's just as competitive now as it was back then. And the Espace is quicker around the circuit, or many circuits, than actual racing cars, despite having not particularly great aerodynamics and not being technically that much of a racing car either. Now, it was an expensive car back on Gran Turismo 2, but it's definitely still going to be worth that kind of money, especially if it was a fully detailed model. If they got the sound right on the car, if they got the handling right, if they got the performance right, it would be incredible. Now, personally, I would actually like to see, on a slight side note, another feature of Gran Turismo come back in line with this car, and that is secret cars and vehicles which you have to win. Since Gran Turismo 5, I believe, I know definitely on Gran Turismo 6, but I can't recall if it was on GT5 as well, you can pretty much buy every car. If you have enough money, you can buy it. And it's very similar on Forza as well. You can just buy any car if you've got enough money. There's nothing that you really have to unlock anymore. And I can understand why they do that. It's because people today have no attention span. But we need that back. The fans need something to work towards. Gran Turismo 6 has the smallest career mode of any Gran Turismo game so far. You can complete it in a day. We need more to accomplish on the game. If Polyphony really wants us to enjoy the game, we need more to accomplish. And I don't just mean Sierra time trial events and crazy moon missions. It needs to be something to work towards. I mean, what happened to the days of having a car in a dealership on a game which was covered in a black cloth? You weren't told anything about the car, just that you had to unlock it at some point. That was one of the coolest things about any racing game, having to unlock those models and not knowing what they were. We need that back on Gran Turismo, and the Espace F1 would be the perfect candidate for having that treatment done to it. Some kind of race series where you win the Espace F1, the black cover comes off the car and you realise just what it is. Now, you could kind of tell what it was from the shape under the cover, but still, the anticipation of unlocking a crazy car like that on Gran Turismo would really bring back that nostalgia. And it would also make, as I said, the game be interesting for longer, because Gran Turismo 6 just doesn't have that kind of expansive career mode, and if they don't fix that in Gran Turismo 7, they're going to lose a lot of people's attention. But for the initial episode, that's pretty much it. Obviously, this video doesn't mean very much in the long run, and I would like to thank the provider of, or the creator of the video footage of the Espace, which I used in this video. I've put a link to his channel, and also I will put a link in the description to a forum post, basically a thread on GranTurismo where we can suggest cars that you'd like to see added to the game. And the Espace F1 has already been suggested. It's one of the most highly voted cars in the forum, but for any who would like to maybe at least try and sway Polyphony into seeing just how popular the Espace still is, you could check out that link and give the car a vote. I didn't suggest for the car, but I wholeheartedly support it. So if you'd like to see the Espace come back, and be sure to check out the other cars as well, but in particular the Espace for this episode, give it a like, because the likes may not seem to do much, but who knows in the long run how much interest Polyphony is actually taking in those car suggestions. And I think that they'd be much more likely to bring back a favoured car from the past than trying to source some new material. But maybe that's just me. So that's it for my first dream car wish list for Gran Turismo 7. Like I said, I'm not sure when the next episode will be, and as I also said, these episodes don't mean all that much in the long run. It's just me putting my thoughts out there as to what cars I would like to see the most. Obviously, we could always say I'd like every car ever made on there, but I like to narrow it down to the cars which I want above all others. So, for that initial kind of episode, that's it. So if you'd like to keep up with other car suggestions or car wish list suggestions like this, which as I said will come out in the future, be sure to hit subscribe down below. If you found this interesting, perhaps check out some of my other videos, such as speculating on what GT Sport will be like, various new cars that have been confirmed by the trailer, my thoughts on the forthcoming VGT cars, etc. Be sure to check those out as well. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.